Welcome back. I'm here now with Candace Fisher. Candace is case manager of the Hoarding Outreach Management Education Team in Lethbridge. And the acronym for that seems rather perfect. The acronym is HOME. The HOME team is a group of interdisciplinary professionals. I'm reading here from various agencies and support services, businesses within the city of Lethbridge who work together to support individuals in the community who are living with hoarding concerns. It's a complex issue. Welcome, Candace.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's really good to have you. I think this is something that we probably could all use a bit of education on. First question is, what is hoarding? How do we define it? How do we identify it? This is kind of a loaded question. What causes it?
So hoarding, again, as you said, is a really complex issue. We identify hoarding itself based on three separate criteria. The first one being the inability to, or the ongoing collection and inability to discard of things appropriately. So when you have basically more coming in than you have coming out. The second piece of that becomes it causes distress to the individual, and lots of times we also see that it causes distress to those that are involved with the individual. And then the number one thing that we look at is when areas in the home can no longer be used for the purpose for which they were designed. So when it gets to the point where you don't have a spot to sit on your couch, or you can't sleep in your bed, you can't cook in your kitchen, once those areas become compromised to the point we can't use them, that's when we really say, okay, here we've got some hoarding tendencies going on.
Okay, that's helpful. We may pass properties that look cluttered, but what is the prevalence of this actual hoarding issue in our community?
Surprisingly enough, actually surprising to a lot of people, is what the research shows and what we know from the work that we've been doing in our community is that in the urban centers, so in cities, it affects about 1% of the population. So if we look at that in terms of Lethbridge, we're looking at anywhere from 800 to 1,000 people.
That seems like a lot.
It is a lot. And then once you start going outside of urban centers into more rural settings, it can actually be as high as 2 to 4%. So it is very high.
I'm really surprised at that. So we see it visually.
Yeah.
But how does it affect a person's health?
Lots of times when we look at hoarding, there's a couple things that we look at because we know that there's complexities that come with it. We understand that there are a lot of vulnerabilities or risk factors that affect people with lived experiences of hoarding. And then we also understand that there's some mental health and some physical health components that come along with that. So with health-wise, we see people that are living with extremely high levels of anxiety and depression. We also see people that have the biggest thing that kind of tips the scales when we're talking about people with hoarding tendencies is processing issues. So attention issues and processing issues with the way the brain works. And so what happens with that is it continues to kind of build that anxiety and that depression. And then in terms of physical health, we have people that continue to isolate. This is a population that really doesn't do anything to reach out to any support services or resources that are in the community, because as time goes on and things get progressively worse, their natural progression is to pull in. So now we're talking about people that don't open their blinds, that don't open their curtains, whose doors are always closed, and they start to not come out. And then you start to see mobility issues. And that's a huge one, because we talk about mobility issues can come about because of hoarding tendencies. But when we're talking about hoarding tendencies and you're not able to move safely and freely around your home, then it then can create mobility issues. So, and then if people are living in not only hoarding scenarios, but also squalor scenarios where there's some garbage or mold or things like that, then we're looking at breathing issues. We're looking at anything that directly affects the health of that person. And we see a lot of that.
And also sometimes animals are hoarded.
Yeah, we've had a couple cases in Lethbridge where there's been significant animal hoarding. And again, that directly affects the health of people. When you're living in a house where the ammonia levels are that high, we know that it's compromising not only their breathing system, but their immune system and their overall health in general.
So it's really just an escalating cycle of those physical and emotional, mental problems.
Yeah. And everything will just get, like I said, things get progressively worse and the individual will continue to isolate, right? So we talk about this, and we've been talking about it with a lot of different agencies lately, that people that we're coming across, that we're working with in their homes, are so disconnected from the healthcare system itself that we're having to go back and really start from scratch to fill in all those gaps and get them reconnected to even just the most basics healthcare system.
That really, you've just begun to answer my next question, and that is how can they be helped?
Yeah. It's difficult, but I think I'm lucky that I get to do this. And really, it starts with myself and usually another member of my team initially will come out with me, environmental public health, and I usually travel together when we're doing those initial visits. And what happens is we really spend some time just getting to know the person and to build a relationship. Nobody's going to let me in their door unless they trust me and that they know and understand that I'm there for their own well-being, not because I want to judge them, not because I want to shame them, not because I want to make things worse, but that at the end of the day, we're here because we're concerned. They're a member of our community and they deserve some assistance. So once we start kind of building that relationship, that's usually what takes the most time, is building a relationship with people and then working with them. And so I spend time with them going into the homes, and I'm not a mental health professional, but what we do is skill building exercises. So basically when we're remembering that there's processing concerns and sometimes attention concerns, and that their anxiety and the depression and feelings of being completely overwhelmed, then we really just break things down to a really small scale and we work on them one at a time. And I don't ever tell people what they have to do with their things. That's up to them. So we have a conversation about what that looks like, and then we figure out what we're going to do with it.
That makes sense. That seems reassuring to me, to take it one bit at a time, because it must seem so completely overwhelming.
It does. And even like I talk about it like in my own life or with my own kids, where if you say to somebody, you need to get this cleaned up, then all they see is this mountain that they're never going to be able to climb. And so when we break things down into smaller achievable tasks, the more you get good at something and the more you're successful doing something, the more willing you are to do it again. And when I start with a 3x3 area, believe it or not. That's how we do the whole house, is really starting with a 3x3 area. And the more they can see that that's actually something that they can do, and the more we do it, the more it becomes a habit, the more we've allowed the brain to create a pathway where they can now do these things. And it's fascinating.
To create new habits will take time.
It does.
And the problem didn't occur overnight, so it's kind of unreasonable to expect that you can just go in and clean it up and it's going to be over.
Exactly. And we were talking about the shows, and I mean, you can go into a home and you can shovel it all out and you can clean it all up, but at the end of the day, we haven't done anything to attend to what's going on for that specific client. We haven't worked with them to kind of figure out what's going on and how we got here and how we can make it look different. And if we don't do that, the same thing's just going to happen over again.
Thank you so much for being with us. It's just wonderful to have this information.
Thank you for having me. I love that we're able to do this in our community. It means a lot to me, and I know the people that we're able to help. It's amazing for them too. So.
And I think if we can provide this education, we can maybe help to reduce the stigma.
Absolutely. We don't want these people to feel so horrible that they don't come out of their homes. We want them to know that we're here to assist and that we can get them connected and we can help them make things better.
They probably already have those feelings.
Oh, some of them are amazing. So like I said, I'm lucky, and the clients and the people that I work with are just fantastic. So
Thanks again.
thank you.
Thanks for being with us.